We have a point of order in the budget for anything that adds to the deficit, but we have a section that specifically excludes the Affordable Care Act from that. So think about it. This budget is conceding the fact that the Affordable Care Act has reduced the deficit, and repealing the law would increase the deficit.
There is another poll out now showing the general public in America seems to be in favor of Obamacare. This as the White House always seeks to remind Republicans that if you break it, you fix it, because we're not going to do this again. Which leads us to the new talk of repeal again, and the fact that we are running out of money for entitlements, a little issue that won't seem to just disappear on its own, unless we start printing money again. So let's get into this. Welcome back to MidPoint, the Newsmax deputy health editor and co-author of the Da Vinci Baby Boomer Survival Guide, Nick Tate. And also here in studio, joined by veteran political analyst, Newsmax contributor, and co-author of the book Power Grab, Dick Morris is back in the house. We got them all working here today. Gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us.
Good to be here, man.
Okay, I throw this out to whomever wants to take it first, because here we are right at this point. If you break it, you fix it. The Obama administration says we're walking away from it, hands off. Okay, then how do the Republicans keep from getting backed into this corner and being blamed if everything shuts down and people in America are without health care?
Well, the issue that is at play now is what the court is going to rule. If the Supreme Court rules in King versus Burwell that the subsidies may not go to anybody who did not come through a state exchange, overrules it for the 3/4 of the country that did not have state exchanges. The question is what happens then.
Right.
And the administration's view would be simply change the law and make it applicable to federal exchanges too. They could do that. But that would be a huge opportunity missed to change and really get an Obamacare system that works. The best approach, which is what I think the Republicans are going to do, is to basically leave it to the states. I think they're going to say, if you want to have the Obamacare system, you can set up, do it through the federal exchanges right now, no problem. We'll change the law. But every state would have the option of opting out and repealing the tax within the state. The taxes would not be collected there. The mandates would not apply there. And the state could design whatever system it wanted.
Can they do it to make sure, and again, I think here's the key that the public wants to hear, to ensure that if it is repealed, removed, replaced, shoved aside, whatever, that no one will go one day without their health care and they won't suffer any problems by that hole that will be created.
Well, there's a precedent here. I mean, legal precedent. If the court, in fact, decides to strike down the subsidies, as Dick says, they're likely to allow for a grace period, which will allow for either the states to step in and create their own exchanges, which would solve the problem, or to allow an alternative plan like the Republican Care Plan to replace Obamacare. Actually, I think this is interesting because this does create the scenario where the Republicans, if the Supreme Court strikes down the subsidies, the Republicans could be kind of victims of their own success.
That, I think, is the biggest fear here.
That's right. And so there's an incentive for Republicans, now controlling both branches of Congress, to step up and say, okay, as you say, you broke it, now you fix it. And there is a pretty strong plan that's been floated. We heard about it again this week, that was introduced last year, that the Republicans are getting behind, called the CARE Act. It does preserve subsidies for those middle-income Americans. They're not as high as the subsidies as Obamacare. You earn up to 3 times the poverty line under the CARE plan as opposed to 4 times the poverty line under Obamacare. But it also allows young Americans to stay on their parents' health insurance up to age 26. It preserves all the benefits in Medicare. But it does away with the individual mandate and the employer mandate, which are 2 of the things that are tied to the subsidies. And it does kick many of these issues back to the states to make their own decisions on things like Medicare or creating these exchanges. So I think there's a real opportunity for Republicans to step up and say, this is what we think works, this is what we think doesn't. And the White House, with President Obama, mindful that this is part of his legacy, will have an incentive to say, all right, I'd like to talk about this.
But I don't agree that there should be any federal legislation on this. I think it should just go back to the states. Let every state make a decision.
Can the states run it properly and run it efficiently and make sure that everybody's taken care of?
Sure they can. They used to regulate insurance, and they can regulate it again.
Well, they still do.
Yeah, and they still do to a certain extent. But let every state make that decision. And the political logic behind that is because I think this isn't going to work. I think Obamacare is a fiasco, and I think it's going to destroy the healthcare system. The blue states will realize that. They're going to see their healthcare system falling apart, whereas the red states will be fine. And I think it will create a self-fulfilling prophecy of basically leaving our system very close to what it is. Most states are going to adopt something where you have tax credits, but no mandates. We'll help you buy insurance, but you won't have to get it. And I think that Obama, there's no argument against it. In other words, if the state doesn't want it, why would you push it down its throat?
But Dick, don't you think that the Congress will have to get involved if the subsidies are struck down? They will merely affect the subsidies. They will leave in place the individual mandate, the healthcare exchanges, all these other aspects of Obamacare will remain on the books.
I'm saying that they should repeal those as national legislation.
I see.
And leave it up to the states to do what they want.
Well, states like Kentucky, in fact, have stepped forward, and Mitch McConnell has made the point that the Kentucky state healthcare exchange is working, and his view is we can repeal Obamacare and still allow states to move forward and do those things that make sense for their citizens as well as politically and financially.
I think rather than redesign Obamacare, rather than fix it if it's broke, if the court breaks it, because the Democrats didn't draft it properly, the states should have that option. And I think that what you'll see is that will create an enormously tilted playing field in favor of the red states. And increasingly, it's going to cause reform in the blue states. I think that, and Obama can't make the argument that you need the national pool because he's got a large enough pool of the blue states.
We've only got about 30, 40 seconds left. Can we all agree, though, that no matter how we get down to it, we're running out of money on entitlements? That used to be a big thing that we would hear every single day. We don't hear it anymore. We still have to get to that point. We're running out of money.
Yeah, but Obamacare costs us a vast amount of money.
Indeed.
The estimates that it cuts the deficit are laughable. And it's a huge, huge cost, both to the individual and in the deficit. But if you devolve it on the states, it's really going to work, I think.
And my concern is if there isn't a state plan or a federal state plan, a lot of those folks that are getting those subsidies that we can't afford are going to have to pay for them out of pocket. Premiums could go up by 255% if those individuals lose those subsidies, and nobody can absorb that in their budget.
And the beat and the numbers go on. Want to remind everybody once again, Dick Morris joins us. Don't forget to get his book, Power Grab, still a fascinating read. And also don't forget Nick Tate's book, which is the Da Vinci Baby Boomer Survival Guide. We'll get you all set, let you tell you what the president's up to, and then we'll get you to survive your later years as well. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it always.
Good.
All right, where can you find $500 million of your tax money? Easy. Point east, go several thousand miles and check out a few battlefields. We'll tell you where it all sits right here on MidPoint. Next.